All right. We are live, I believe. Excuse me, I'm running a little bit late. There we go. Get rid of the echo and pull everything back up. I overslept a little bit. So there's that. And so here we are live. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Do all the things. Make sure you like the video, like the live stream. Hey guys, sorry. Let's see, who do we got here? While I'm zipping around, let's see. It looks like Rimmer's here. We got Salty Cracker, the artist formerly known as Asho, here. Fred is here. That's good. I like having Fred here. So far, I think that is all that has identified themselves. So thank you very much for being here. Today is a little bit different in that we're dealing with a guy. It's Mark Driscoll, and he's going to tell us what God all of us atheists worship. So I actually have not watched this video. It's blind as well as live. So so there's that. I'm kind of pretending like, okay, I went to his church and I sat in the pew and I'm listening to him sermonize, and as a former pastor who preached a lot of sermons, I'm going to be critiquing him on a lot of different things. But I always love it when theists tell me what I believe and what I think and what I worship. It's always really fair that they, just do that without talking to atheists in the first place. So, I formerly smelled as Asho. Okay, I can get that right. But all right. So, let me pull.
Of us, this real test.
I'm gonna make you shut up for a bit. This is Mark Driscoll. He's preaching in his church, I believe. I don't know much about him. The title of this sermon is what grabbed me. And as a former minister, I kind of gravitate to pastors when they talk about atheists, because usually it means that they're propagandizing. They're not really, they've got a lot of people with confirmation bias in front of them. And part of the job of a pastor is reinforce that. So they're, already I'm kind of like not really looking for something fair anyway. So there's that. I don't know. Let's okay, let's see what he's going to have to say. This is blind too. Like, I'm pretending I'm sitting in the audience and listening to the sermon. The only advantage I have is I can pause the guy, like having a time stop. So we'll see what he does. But this is obviously the middle of one of his sermons, or one of the points of his sermons. So we'll see what happens. There's that. All right. Welcome, Evan. Good to see you. Yeah, we're about to begin, so you're right on time. Right on time. Okay. And then we got John from Holland. That's Europe. So welcome, John. I got your email, by the way. I read it. I'm just a busy dude sometimes and don't have time to respond to everything that I get, unfortunately. All right. Well, let's see what Mr. Driscoll, Pastor Driscoll, has to say about us atheists and what God we worship. Let's get started.
For most of us, this real test of lordship in our life is in matters of sexuality. And then what happens is, when the wrath of God is...
I'm not really sure about all that. You know, the problem with sexuality is that atheists make a bigger deal out of it than I do, or pastors and theists do. One of the things that really changed for me when I got out of faith was looking at sexuality a little bit more objectively. And yeah, it changes. And so what he's saying here is a little bit more in the camp of theism. He's not really, he's already a little bit in house rather than outside, but it's like, this is what people say. And I have noticed a trend when I'm criticized as an atheist. It's usually about, oh, what sexual sin did you want to do? And it's like, I'm not doing anything. In fact, it's a little disappointing how little sexual sin I'm doing. So there's that. So, all right. Yeah. Depocalypse, welcome. Yeah, we're just getting started here. This is about a 9-minute segment from one of his sermons. So we'll see where he goes. But he's already kind of like pushing the sexual angle. So I'm kind of figuring that's where he's headed. Yes, it doesn't really have, that's the thing. This doesn't really have a lot to do with atheism already. And there's a lot of assumptions that are behind this almost immediately. So, and this is the first time I've ever watched this video, and I'm already kind of like, if I was sitting there in the pew, I'd be like, not all of us are sex obsessed. So it's one of the things that's really weird. It's a phenomena that a lot of atheists, a lot of people who deconvert experiences, sex doesn't become as all encompassing as it was when you were in the faith. It's like it becomes more normalized. And so you don't obsess about it as much. And so I think that's one of the things that should be noted, that my own experience is, the constant thoughts, am I sinning with my mind, all the stuff, all stopped with that. So, yeah, it's the answer to one question and one question only. Yeah, it doesn't count towards their virginity. Yes. The thing about it is there's a lot of sex that happens in every youth group that I've ever been a part of or knew about. So, so there's that. Let's see what else he's going to say here.
Poured out and the truth of God is suppressed, that ultimately sex replaces God as the new religion. Romans 1, 21 through 25. For although they knew God, you know something about God, looking at the world that he made, they did not honor him as God.
Or they come to the conclusion that God doesn't exist, and they get away from the idea of God, and so they don't really see a need to honor something that doesn't exist to them. Okay. He's definitely going to hit. So he's got Romans 1, 21 and 25. It sounds like he's going through part of this chapter. So it ought to be real fun for us atheists. We all love this chapter so much, where Paul just makes a whole shit ton of assumptions. So we're already off on the wrong foot for most of us atheists. So if I'm an atheist and I'm coming into his church and I want to know what God I worship, he's already kind of said that, if we don't worship the actual God, we replace him with basically sex, and that it's all about sex, it's sexual identity. We all want to join the LGBTQ community. We want to, his assumption is that Romans is the truth. And so he's already, talking about how sex has become a religion, how it's all become all this stuff. And so therefore that is what we worship. So yeah, the more it's prohibited, the more it's obsessed over. So you hit a point about sexuality in the United States. There's always been these stages when women reveal more of their bodies with their clothing, and everybody gasps in horror and clutches their pearls and all this stuff. But you're right, when skirts got short enough where women could walk better, it showed their ankles all the time, and everybody got obsessed with that. And then later on, bare arms, and more cleavage and shorter skirts, and the Star Trek skirt, the mini skirt, kind of ignited a whole bunch of controversy in this country in the 60s. So it was it's always this graduated stuff that they have a problem with. And when you're in a society that basically makes sex into this very narrow corridor and you can't really talk about it either, yeah, it's going to be more of a problem. So he's already going down the route, though, of we actually know that there's a God and we just want to replace him with sex. So that's kind of where I'm getting the vibe of. So we'll see what he does here in a few minutes. So there's that. A lot of people do, and that is the problem, Fred. A lot of people in this country care what this old book says. So, oh, they do? Okay, well, yeah, because I can see, Evan, where depending on your society and how much a woman shows, this is why the whole body coverings of women in Islamic societies. It's like you can't see anything but their eyes. And even then they'll complain about the sexuality of eyes. It's like when you're obsessed with being pure in this area, you start to try to control, in particular, because most of these religions are male dominated. So you got to control the female side of the equation. So there's that aspect. Yeah, I mean, that's your and my view. I'm fairly certain Mark has a typical fundamentalist Christian view here already, but we'll see. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. So we'll see. But okay, but he's already kind of accused that he's made the statement, the claim basically, that if you don't acknowledge God, you're going to switch to the other God, which is sex. Okay, and don't get me wrong. I mean, if you study pagan religions and polytheistic religions, sex is definitely very much a part of it. Fertility rites, things like that are very much a part of it. But it comes from more of it's part of nature. So, let's deal with it. So, but let's let him continue, because otherwise we'll be here all night. And I don't want to do that. Most of the night, maybe, but not all of it. Yeah, I think we're already headed that direction, but we'll see.
Or give thanks to him. No appreciation. But they became futile.
Well, I got to stop there. No appreciation. Why should I appreciate a God who in the Old Testament orders genocide and murders infants and lets the guilty go, as I pointed out last week in my When God Kills series? Why should I give thanks to a God who is portrayed as somebody who doesn't have a better solution to the problem of sin, which he makes up, than to basically kill his own kid, to sacrifice himself to appease the wrath that he himself has, which he could deal with all by himself without a sacrifice. So it's like where human sacrifice is an accepted mentality. Why should I thank that kind of God? Why should I thank a God that ultimately is the creation of human minds and not so the yeah, no. I don't know where you're going with that, Vernon, but be careful. My mods have a dim view of people preaching at them or saying bullshit about atheists, because that would be a bullshit statement. So I don't pretend that God doesn't exist. I don't believe he does exist. So there's that. Yeah, Fred fixed it for you. So there you go. Hey, skeptically pissed. Yeah, it's definitely written by men. No woman ever writes this way. Okay. Now that women are kind of allowed in the Western world into the sexual discussion, sex makes a little bit more sense. So but when you keep their viewpoint out, you're missing half of the equation. So always talking about shit. They don't believe in evolution. I've got a Big Bang and name a few of them. And even most Christians don't understand any of the above. Yes, they don't. Fundies are pretty interesting. Having been part of a fundamentalist denomination in the Assemblies of God, they're very interesting in the fact that no matter what you say to them, no matter what proof you say to them, they always go back to their Bible. So, yeah, why would we give thanks for what? That's kind of my point here. But yeah. Well, let's see. Okay, so he's going through this verse. So let's let him continue just a little bit more. No, also wrong. Once again, what you're showing is you're not wanting dialogue, and all you want to do is make a bunch of accusations about atheists, which are not true, because you're not actually letting atheists define themselves, and that's rude. Okay, and it's also, if I may be so bold, shows intellectual dishonesty. Okay, if you want to be dishonest, there you go. But that's dishonest. Yeah, tread some lightly. That's very disrespectful what you said. Um, yeah, and all of them are men. Also, but yeah, the power of the Holy Spirit not demonstrated. It's not inspired. It has contradictions. I'm a former minister and Bible scholar myself, so yeah, no, doesn't work. Doesn't work for us. Yeah, they probably should take that as a definition of pride. I think that would be fair. That's fair. Um, so there's that. Wow, you guys are agreeing. Yeah. There's nothing perfect about the Bible. Go study it instead of listening to the indoctrinated doctrine statements of the Bible being perfect. Go actually look at it and ask yourself, is this an item of perfection? So, yeah, it just proves they don't know what they're talking about. See, every time I hear these guys go on about what atheism is and stuff, it's like you guys just demonstrate you don't know what you're talking about, and you don't have enough human empathy or honesty to actually talk to an atheist to find out what it's about. And you just listen to your regurgitated stuff that your preachers tell you. And I have a feeling that Mr. Driscoll is pretty much doing the same. So there's that. And as Owl points out, interpretation means you can make a lot of these verses say a lot of different things. So you can do anything with them. So there's that. Test bug. Okay. What kind of bug are you? So be careful. All right. Let's go on.
In their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Now they don't think so because they went to college. And they had futile.
I don't know what it is, but religion really attacks higher education a lot. And having been through it, I can tell you that even on a secular campus, um, there's difference of opinion on religion on a secular campus. Like when I went to Ferris, we had Muslims on campus, we had Christians on campus, we had Hindus on campus. Every university seems to attract a diversity of religion. And so the problem with the attack on this is, yes, we should listen to you, a guy who just pulls stuff out of his ass, instead of somebody who sits down and actually studies something at length, goes over it for 2 years, checks their data, has to go through peer review. And, in peer review, it is absolutely a mark of honor to find a flaw in somebody's research. So I don't know. It's the problem with his take on that is like, do you guys not also do higher education? I mean, I have a degree from Trinity Bible College, a Christian school, and I have another degree from Asbury Theological Seminary. Is that also not a Christian school? Those are colleges and grad schools. So why are you? It's weird how they trot this line. As long as it's their education, it's okay. So, uh, there's just none of that. Okay, and so he's got to say, oh, they became foolish. If you go to college, you become foolish. And it's like, no, it really is people just giving information and stuff. And You got to poison the well about universities and college. So when a professor talks, then, then the crowd doesn't listen to him. As a preacher, he's and an indoctrinator, by the way, preachers are indoctrinators. He's indoctrinating his people basically with that little phrase to question everything a professor says, question everything somebody with a doctor or a PhD says, because, their foolish heart is darkened or anything like that. There's no real honest assessment of what a college does. He's poisoning the well. Okay. He's trying to make sure people don't bother to look things up and take it seriously. So even if they do look up a professor or something, then now he's indoctrinated them there with that little barb to basically not take anything that they say seriously if it doesn't agree with their faith. So he's already saying if it doesn't agree with your faith, doesn't agree with the Bible, then it's foolish. Okay. And it's like, that's been, I just don't see that that's true. Okay. And so you got to remember that every preacher is a rhetoric person. They're engaged in rhetoric, and they're trying to engage their audience with trying to get them to believe or think a certain thing. And so he's using the authority of the Bible against his audience because they're buying into it. And then he's offering up commentary that pushes people a certain direction. And as a former pastor, I realize how much I used to do this, because what you end up doing is you end up getting people in their brain to only think a certain way. And when they encounter the real problem I have with this whole tenor of this discussion already is he's probably going to make the statement that, atheists really worship sex, because he's already gone down that road, which I don't. And then, or themselves, that usually is the other one that happens. And then, so even though they say don't believe in God, they really do. So Paul in this letter is already lying about atheists. This is why I know the Bible's not true, because this is not true. Okay. I know what's in my mind. In my mind, I just don't believe in a God anymore. Okay. So when they do that, so whenever his congregates encounter an atheist, they're already thinking that the atheist is dishonest, and that's propaganda work. Okay. It's a page right out of any propagandist timeline. So, yeah, it completely botches man in this passage. Doesn't know shit. Okay. Yeah, probably. But I would recommend not joining at all. So it's a really bad club, by the way. So, but let's keep going. Let's see where he's going.
Thinkers call professors with foolish, darkened hearts who told them that they were wise.
Okay, that's straight A propagandizing rhetoric against professors. Okay, he doesn't want people to listen to people that have actually studied and educated themselves on a topic. Rather, he wants them to listen to him and preachers like him. This is a classic thing of a cult leader who tries to diminish the opinions of others that he doesn't like. Okay, Paul does it in Romans, and Driscoll here is doing it here. Okay, he's absolutely trying to poison the well against any interaction with a professor, any interaction with a university, findings, research findings, things like that. Well, they don't have God in it, so it must be foolish and unwise, even though it might represent truth. So I have never really it's an interesting case. Like we've been talking about it on a couple live streams where Christians always have to, don't watch TV. When I was younger, when the internet came out, don't get on the internet. That'll poison your faith. Don't listen to Christian rock and roll. Don't listen, or even any kind of music, rock and roll. Don't listen to this person. Don't read that book. Don't read that book. Don't read that book. And it's like, what are you afraid of? Okay, what are you afraid of? That your bullshit here is going to be countered, and somebody's actually going to give facts and evidence about how people think and how people arrive at conclusions? I mean, what are you afraid of? And this is the classic propagandist at work. Okay. And preachers are propagandists. They're propagandizing their faith. Okay. And he's trying to get you, oh, I don't want to listen to that. I don't want to listen to that professor. I don't want to read that book because it's foolish. Okay. Don't go to school because it's just foolish. And, keep yourself ignorant and stupid. And that way you can keep your faith. Okay. And it's like, I always hated that as a Christian. And I still hate it. So, yeah, retorts to the same issue. So there's that. All right, let's keep going.
We have entire departments devoted to deception. Education is filled
I'm going to let him go.
Intellect, but not wisdom. Claiming to be...
Okay, that's straight up grade A bullshit. Okay, I'm calling him out on that one. Saying that, I mean, the grand, glorious conspiracy theory that these people have, that all these people are dedicated to certain subjects and somehow all of them are in on this conspiracy to, deceive people. Like, how would that hold up? I mean, most conspiracies don't, if you have more than 4 or 5 people involved, it's going to fail. Okay. Because too many people know, and so it's like, no, there's that. Yeah. It's kind of shit. Yeah. That kind of sums up my feelings right now about this video, but it's like, he's poisoning the well in the mind of his adherents about, education, because, don't get educated and actually find out facts, because that might actually end your belief in God when you start studying the facts. So I don't know. It's just, he's off on the wrong foot with me already. We'll see how far we get into this video, because I sometimes develop, when I listen to preachers, my RTS comes out and it's like, yeah, fuck this shit. So, so there's that.
Wise, very smart, very insightful, lots of degrees. They became fools.
Yeah, it means they studied a bunch of stuff and actually have more knowledge than you, and you're insecure about that, just like Paul was insecure about it. And so you lash out at them because that's your insecurity. If you really felt your stuff was the truth and could be demonstrated, you wouldn't have problems with anybody talking about other possibilities, because you would be confident in the facts and data of your answer. So you're just showing how insecure about your position you are when you got to attack somebody else.
They were very offended by that word. And they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. They started worshiping created beings. Now, some of you say, that's really weird. Really? What happens every Sunday is we worship the Cardinals and the Seahawks and the Lions and the Bears. The Bears. It's interesting.
Really? Oh my God. Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. It's poorly educated people. People love those people. Oh my gosh. I don't know. Oh man. See, he's of the ilk that if you give something more attention, or you're part of a fan base, or you're part of, like, you could be a Harry Potter fan or a Star Wars fan, and if you go too far with that, you're worshiping it. And I never understood the reasoning behind all of this. Like, it's all about making sure people stay interested in the religious bullshit. Okay. This is a very, control your church technique, because you want people to be dedicating themselves, their time, their money, their energy, it's like it's all about getting people to stay in the church and stay focused on the church, reading the Bible all the time, praying all the time, coming to church all the time, so that they never bond with other groups. Like, you want everybody to have their social bonds inside the church, and this ilk doesn't want them to have social bonds on any other level, like, being a fan of a sports team or stuff like that. So I don't understand why this kind of thing is a threat to Christianity, because it's mostly about attention. Yeah, valid point, BS. It's kind of a low bar for worship, of whether worship is. So he's already, it's like, I'm not really sure where, it seems to me like this particular preacher and this brand of Christianity is kind of more of a, we don't want anything to distract us from our worship and love of God. So we define everything else as worship, and then we can say it's idolatry. Okay. So he's trying to make this connection between, being fans of sports and idolatry. And that way he can say, yeah, you got to watch that stuff so you're not idol worshiping and things like that. And, it's a big leap to go from this, idea of worship of a God to this stuff. So, I don't know. It's a really interesting tactic, because basically what he's doing is, if you do anything else besides church stuff, religion stuff, and God stuff, then you're being an idolater. Okay. And, and he's going to head different directions with that. So let's keep going. Maybe we'll get through this video today.
That even our sports teams that we have with religious devotion and we build stadiums to, they have as their mascot beasts of the field and birds of the air. Next line. Therefore,
they also have saints. Did you forget that part? That they have saints of the church. New Orleans is big on that. There's also a lot of different human beings in there. Patriots, things like that. I mean, I'm sure you're a patriotic American, so we'll see what don't you have any of that in there? So there's that. So there's that part. Okay.
For God gave them up in the lust of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and they worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is forever praised or forever blessed. Amen.
And Paul is completely full of shit here. Okay. I'm sorry for those theists in the room, but he's completely, this is an assertion. This is Paul's conclusion when he has finished everything. And so basically God just gives up. I find it weird that an omnipotent, omniscient God would give up on something. Okay. I've always found that a weird idea. So either Paul has a very diminished view of what God is compared to the omni God, or it's like, I'm sure the free will defense will come out, but it's like, you can still present yourself as God in such a way that's very convincing if you had all this power and knowledge and know what would convince somebody. And so to me, God's omnipotence kind of undercuts Paul here. But, I'm not, he's talking about idolatry and classic ancient idolatry. And so he's got this new religion. So he's got to push that. And so he's pushing the idea of worshiping the creature creator, because, the passage is going to go on about sexual behavior. And so he's trying to make the case that sex has become a religion, but I don't think it has any of the aspects of religion, unless you put it in the context of like a worship setting, like a pagan worship setting. I don't think you can make that case. Yeah, way to claim that you have knowledge that you can't demonstrate. So there's that. So yeah, it's kind of weird that he's heading, Paul has always bothered me here, because he's making a lot of assertions, but he doesn't really bother to back them up. And I know that this is, yeah, he had to be hauled back home in a car. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of duh in this passage. So I just don't have, when I listen to preaching now, my initial reactions most of the time are more, wow, how wrong can you be about life? Okay. So, yeah, he started to preach a little bit and appreciate it. He's like, we're not here to listen to people's preaching. If you want to defend what Mr. Driscoll's saying, that's fair game. But, it's like, I'm not seeing it. But, Paul in this passage, seeing we still have it up, it's like he's making a claim that they're dishonoring their bodies, they're among themselves, because they've exchanged the truth about God for a lie. So his assumption still is everybody that believes in God, and they just deny him. And so this idea is as old as Christianity. It's one of the oldest ideas in Christianity that, people who say they don't believe in God, or they're really worshiping something else. They're really, they're denying God, but they really believe in him. And the problem with this claim is anybody who's been an atheist for a while will realize that this is bullshit. Okay. I really genuinely do not believe in God. And so Paul is wrong. Okay. And that's how you begin to realize that the Bible is not inerrant. Okay. That these people were ancient people that really didn't know much about life, and they didn't know much, that at least as much as we do. But we've already had the spewing against education. Don't learn something. You might not buy my bullshit anymore. Okay. So I'm looking at Mr. Driscoll as a salesman. Okay. And he's doing all this classic salesman stuff. You don't want to follow these other things because they might actually lead, they might work better than my imaginary product. And so, and my imaginary friend. And so I've got to attack them and show their deficiencies so I can keep you on my imaginary stuff. So, yeah. Yeah. Wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. Yes. Yes. The Bible. Um, Yes, we could very much reasonably expect that Scripture will reject all other cult worship besides itself. A lot of religions do this in their holy books. They have, this is why ours is true and everybody else is bullshit kind of stuff in them. I don't know of too many religions that don't. Some of them just say, they realize that it's all about the acceptance of the truth of whatever message they're trying to do, and so they just go with whatever. Um, yeah, that's part of the problem. A lot of it's actually, like the Quran is jotted down from memory, and that's, if you think the Bible is bad in its origin story, the Quran is even worse. Yeah, the Sikhs do accept a lot of all beliefs. They're very open to everything, so that kind of leads them down a lot of paths. But a lot of the religions that they believe in have statements about believing in other religions, like Romans 1:18 through 25. He's only dealing with 21 through 25. But it's, they all have these statements about if you don't worship our God, you're just in falsity. And he's just pressing that angle as much as he can. And like a good salesman, he's trying to press his product at the expense of everybody else. And so he's got to diminish everybody else's product. So right now he's attacking atheism because, you're just lying to yourself and lying to everybody else. And when you say that you don't believe in God, because everybody believes in God, and that's where presuppositionalist apologetics has its origins. Like everybody believes in God. And so anybody, I can just assume that, and then everybody else is lying and I don't have to prove it. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where he's driving this point home. I'm very interested to hear where we're going to have sex become a religion. I'm very interested in that.
What he's talking about here is this: the two most important questions that you will ever need to answer in your life is who is God and who am I?
Or better yet, does God actually exist, and what evidence is there for his existence? And who am I? I don't know. That's a constantly evolving question. I don't see the problem with these all or nothing questions that theist and religious leaders like to throw out. And whenever I hear them, it's like, who I am is kind of an in process thing. And they want you to, like, it's got to be this or that. You're either a Christian or you're not. You either believe in God or you don't. It's like it always comes down to this dichotomy. And it's like, I'm not sure that that's accurate anymore. So that it's really kind of weird where he's heading, because I'm not sure that those are the two most important questions I would ask. I mean, once you dismiss God, there's a hell of a lot more important questions. What do I do with my life? And, who I am is kind of a question, but it's like, who am I becoming would be a better way of putting it. So true. So, yeah, me too. I mean, I like it. I just don't know if it's my religion. Maybe it is. I don't know. I really don't think I have a religion, and I kind of fight religious behavior even inside the atheist community. So there's that. Yeah, food, water, and shelter, way more important than God. If we got those nailed there, Fred, then a lot of the other questions are just add-on questions of passing the time. So what's a question? Yeah, that's a good one too. But yeah, so here we go. But all right, let's keep going. I'm just not sure that those are the two most important questions, but he says they are.
Who is God? Who am I? And what he says here is this is a whole group of people. They're now the majority. You need to know that the world in its wisdom doesn't know God. That most of the people have been conformed to the image of this world.
In the world, the whole world. Okay, I would say that that's not true. If you go to like Latin America, the two major viewpoints are either Catholic Christianity or Pentecostal Christianity, and some people a mix of both. Africa is very much a lot of believers, either Islam, Christianity, or native religions. I'm sorry, atheism is not even in a majority in the United States. It's growing, but it's not. Certainly Christians still outnumber atheists. So that's what he just said there is a complete false statement. I mean, in Europe, you might get kind of some countries that are pretty much godless now. Good for them. But this is fear mongering. He's trying to put in their heads that, oh, this is the majority now. This is the majority of everything, that people all believe this stuff. And it's like, no, not really. If you look around the world, there seems to be a lot of believers. Okay. I mean, you get out of Western Europe and get into Eastern Europe, there was a lot of believers. I remember when I went to Hungary and Romania, how many believers there were still around me. So, and a supposed, former communist Soviet bloc stuff. So, yeah, it's just kind of weird that he says that. Yeah, it gets boring as a subject after a while. I'm yeah, that is interesting. I try to bring up that point a lot, and people get pissed at me for bringing it up. I had some guy in one of my streams kind of get upset. He said, "Oh, I've heard that tired old." Yes, and you've heard the tired old argument. The problem is you haven't answered it. Okay, you haven't faced the reality of the fact that you are an atheist about every God but your own. Okay, and so it's kind of that. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's more of a political thing than a social thing. They're trying to identify themselves as not Muslim. So and Islam and Christianity are threatening to go to blows again in Europe. So yeah, it could happen. Eh, yeah, they may be the only one that gets it right, and they're still really weird. So I've dealt with Eastern Orthodox people on the channel, so there's that. There's that. All right. Well, let's see where he's going.
They've come to the conclusion that God is not worth honoring. That God is not worth thanking. That God is not worth obeying.
Okay, first of all, if you don't believe something exists, those aren't even valid questions. But you're going once again with Paul's assumption that everybody believes, and they're just denying it in their unrighteousness. And that is patently not true. Okay, I'm not trying to be, this is where Paul kind of, he's on that shtick of everybody believes. And so now he's, Driscoll here is basically regurgitating Paul saying, they've come to this, he's not worthy worship. No, we've come to the conclusion that he doesn't exist based on the evidence presented, that your evidence for saying that he exists is not there. So why should I worship something that, and do all those things too, if I don't really have good convincing evidence that he exists in the first place? Yeah, and it comes to the question, God is not worthy. I mean, the Old Testament God certainly isn't worthy of worship. The New Testament God is actually worse, if you think about it, because that's where hell comes in, and he kills his own kids. So there you go. Yeah, non-existence will do that for you. And yes, a perfect being wouldn't require anything. He wouldn't need anything out of me. And for creating you without your consent. There was a writing on the walls of Auschwitz that was uncovered that people don't like to talk about very much, but somebody wrote in Auschwitz, if God exists, he's going to have to beg for my forgiveness. Okay, so yeah, exactly. I hear you. It's the same kind of tone. So, who? Me? My dad, if you're asking about me, whether I forgave my parents, I can't see, other than introducing me to this religion, which I would say that they were indoctrinated themselves into it. So, I mean, who's the victim here and who's the victimizer? Okay. And, you're talking to skeptically. Yeah, I don't know. Well, in one case, forgiveness of parents for doing this stuff. I just want to put it out there, remind everybody that if you grew up in this, if you grew up in all of this, your parents were just as indoctrinated as you. And so who's the real victim becomes a real question. And who's the victimizer? Yeah, thanks. I missed it, but yeah, it's always helped to mark who you're talking to. And then I can, it's helpful, but I understand it doesn't happen. So, well, let's see where Mark's going. Seeing he's saying we've all come to this conclusion, but he's got erroneous reasons for the conclusion.
That God is wrong and that God is repressive. And that God is restricting us from evolving into the next level of our greatness.
Okay, no atheist really says that. And I haven't really come to those conclusions in those ways. These are not questions I would even ask if I don't believe something exists. Okay, so Driscoll is still pushing with Paul's propaganda that atheists believe and that we just come to conclusions about God. And that's just not true. It's just really, really bad here. So it really is that issue of he's continuing to push the narrative that these people really do believe and they've just rejected God, and really in their mind what they've done is all these things. And it's like, no, once you come to the conclusion that the evidence isn't sufficient for belief in a God, these are not even questions you really ask. It's not really a mentality that you have. And so this is all rhetoric and it's all propaganda about atheists at this point, which Paul does in Romans, and and he's particularly engaged in paganism. Paul's not dealing with people that are atheists. He's dealing with people that worship other things besides what he's selling. And so he's got to demonize them as they rejected the real God and worship all these other ones. And so there's that. Yes, it is. And whenever you got to understand, as a former preacher, as I listen to these preachers and as somebody who's worked in retail a long time, I know how this works. Okay. The sales pitch is hard here. He's trying to demonize anybody with any other ideas other than the idea he has about God. And so it's as Rimmer here says that yes, the misunderstandings are intentional. Like they have really genuinely deluded themselves into thinking that atheists really do believe in God. We've just deliberately rejected him. And that's just patently untrue. Okay. If you actually talk to an atheist and talk to them about what they worship, but Driscoll hasn't done any of that. He's just read his book and he's come to the same conclusions because he has to, because he's more of a fundy minister. Already, I can see it in the way he treats the Bible. So there's that. No, it doesn't. It's worse. Okay, all of them are bad. I could go on Baptist theology all day. It's just crap. Yes, and this is what it comes down to, because he's standing on the authority of the Word of God, so called, and then that boosts his authority. I've said it before. Religion bases itself on its authority, which is basically manufactured by itself. Okay, it shows up in every council of churches. Okay, it's like we have the authority to define what we are, and tell everybody what the truth is. And on our authority that we made up and created for ourselves, that's what we're doing. And Driscoll's no different. Protestant ministers, Catholic ministers, it doesn't matter. They're all engaged in this manufactured authority that they gave themselves. And they don't have, that's why I don't really respect any authoritative argument that's an argument from authority, regardless of where it comes from, because a lot of times authorities are just manufactured, so by the person. So, hey, Chapman. Yes, he definitely relies on fraudulent authority, and he's doing it here too. So, but let's continue. But all the questions he just asked is not a questions that an atheist would ask, because if he thought about it for 5 seconds, if you've basically come to the conclusion there's no God, you don't believe in one, none of those questions are valid. But he goes on the authority of the Word of God, where Paul says everybody still believes. They've just changed from true belief to something false. So it's kind of that. Even Paul wrote that, he very clearly says he was repeating what Jesus says. He doesn't do that here. This is his justification, nothing more. Yes. There's nothing that Jesus says that talks about this. That's one of the weaknesses of Romans 1, is Jesus never talks this way. Okay. In fact, you will find that Paul's theology and the way Jesus teaches, there's probably a ton of ways you could show that they disagree with each other. And I know that many YouTubers have done it. If I sat down, I could probably show you how, Jesus and Paul disagree with each other. So, but yeah. So, God is all powerful. Actually, it would be undeniable as sunrise. There would be no room for interpretations or arguments. Correct. There wouldn't be all these divisions in Christianity or even Islam or all the rest of it that believe in a Abrahamic God. So yeah, but well, let's see what Driscoll has to say.
The only thing holding us back is religion and guilt, sin, shame, tradition. And if we could simply unburden ourselves of those things related to God, then we would grow into the fullness of our full potential.
I'm not really sure that I don't even talk that way. I think religion is a waste of your time, but I don't think it's necessarily holds people back all the way. I mean, there's good human reasons why people join religions, and most of them have to do with human desire and need, not a real belief in God in the first place. So, dude, it's like, I'm not trying to get rid of these things. You're basically saying tradition and religion and all that stuff holds people back from doing something like rejecting God or moving on. And you haven't proven any of that, like religion actually does anything positive. I know everybody, I get it all the time, but religion does so many good. I even have family members that talk that way. And it's like, but it causes you, I don't understand how believing something that's demonstrably false can help anything. In the end, it just occupies time that you could be doing something else that would make your life and other people's lives better, and genuinely so. And when you consider all the harm that religion has done through the millennia, and I'm, shotgunning them all, you have to say that, the jury's kind of out on whether or not religion actually does good. Okay. I mean, you know, I don't know, genocide and murdering each other because you don't, and torturing each other because you don't believe the same fantasy story seems to be a little bit of a downer from religion's point of view. So, yeah. So, but yeah, I wouldn't talk that way. I'm not trying, it's like you're purposely trying to get rid of religion so you can do what you want is basically the motive here. And that's just not true. I can't, it's the idea that if we got rid of all this stuff, we could just do what we want. And it's like, no, we can't just do what we want. It's that we'd have all this relativistic, based on feelings morality. And that's their misunderstanding of subjective morality. So there you go. Yeah, I wonder if he believed in the earthly Jesus at all. He seems to believe in a Jesus from his vision, and that means it's completely created by Paul. It's very doubtful that Paul actually knew Jesus, which is kind of weird. I mean, he would have been a kid or a teenager at the time Jesus was running around, so I don't know. Yeah, it's the warping your thinking that I think is most damaging. When you take something that's a fantasy and make it into reality in your life, that tends to make you treat people differently. Like just the basic fact that there's a rift and a schism in between some of my family members and myself simply because I don't believe as they do. That's a damaging of our relationships over a fantasy. Okay. It's like, it's really weird. There's that. So there's that aspect of it. Uh, proof of and while religion is certain of everything and requires proof of nothing. Exactly. It's given the age, it's possible, but a lot of people believe that's John Mark, the author. So, but I don't think so because I think Mark is written by somebody later that didn't have much to. He's just collecting stories. So I've made that case in Questionable Witnesses many, many times that the people who wrote the Gospels really didn't actually know the events. They were just hearing hearsay stories and trying to put them in order. That seems to be the motif there. So I think he would have, if he had actually ever met Jesus. In fact, he would have put it somewhere in his authentic letters. He would absolutely have done that. He would have talked more about that than his experience on the Damascus Road. So, yep. All right, let's see where Driscoll's going with this.
This is the entire human potential movement. This is the entire self-help movement. This is the entire self-esteem movement.
Okay. So all those things are bad, like trying to make yourself a better person, trying to make yourself this and that are bad things. Oh, that's right. We want to make sure that everybody's completely reliant on our imaginary Jesus. Okay, fair enough. Moving along.
We don't need self-help, we need God help. We don't need self-esteem, we need God esteem. Our problem is not that we're not achieving our goodness, the problem is that we're achieving our badness, and we need...
Based on whose definition of badness? Okay, I don't rely on help of somebody I don't believe exists. Okay. And this is the real problem because what ends up happening is you're still engaged in self-help. You're still engaged in driving human potential. You're just saying that God is doing it. It's adding an authoritative layer to what you do. So then you can just do whatever the hell you want and say, well, God is making me better, or be patient with me. God hasn't finished with me yet, and all this other crap. And it really is used to kind of justify bad behavior by Christians. And then they can say, well, God's still working on me. And it's that mentality that allows them to do shitty things and then say, oh, it's, I'm sorry, I'm not finished yet. I need more fruit of the spirit in that area. It's why, like, every time I deal with certain apologists on this channel, they can be really nasty, and some commenters can also be really nasty. And it's like, how do you square that with Jesus's love your neighbor? How do you square that with do good for your enemies? I don't get it. So there's that. Yeah, and honest people, I do that all the time. People don't listen. When they do questionable witnesses, they got to argue with me. But so mentioning Jesus because of the criterion of embarrassment has always amused me, B.S. Lewis, because the only people that bring it up are apologists, the only flipping ones. Yeah, and I think you're right, Remmer. I think his problem is people aren't buying his books, and they're not coming to his sermons, and they're not putting money in his offering plate if they actually work on themselves and improve themselves. He doesn't make any money off of that. He can't make any money off of that. So it's like he's, it's definitely a sales coach kind of thing. This is why I laugh at this shit now, because I see the salesmanship in it all the time. It's just, it's a salesman rhetoric. Okay. And it's like, I got to demonize every other thing so people only buy my stuff. Okay. That's kind of where it's at. Oh, yeah. People do improve their lives from time to time on their own, and they don't rely on God. Okay. They don't rely on God. And he's just like creating this, dependency on this imaginary character. And the problem is the imaginary character is basically in your own image. So you've just created this thing that you're talking to in your head. People say, oh, I'm not talking to somebody, I'm not talking to imaginary. Well, prove that. Okay, it sounds like you're talking to yourself. They have to hide behind faith because it's all they got. It's all they got. Because when you put them to the test of evidence, they usually fail. Like pretty much all polytheistic gods kind of fail that way. You can clearly see that this is early, fantasy writing or science fiction writing. So if you take religion books as early fantasy and science fiction genre, they're a lot easier to take. So, but yeah. All right, let's see where he's going.
Someone to save us from ourselves. His name is Jesus. The second question is, who am I?
Okay, I have to mention this real quickly, but this is also diminishing human capacity, that we're all evil, we're all sinners, we're all corrupted, and so we can't do any good, and we need somebody to come up on a white knight and save our ass. Okay, that's kind of his motif here. See, Ozzy said he was not able to lie because alcohol abuse. He did not have the memory to be able to lie. So we should all become alcoholics to live in the truth. I do remember him saying that. but as the apocalypse went, but isn't the fact that we're broken and sinners kind of God's fault? I mean, he puts us in a situation that we know that he knows that we can't win. And a lot of people argue that evil is necessary for God to express his goodness even more. So God had to have evil and had to have us sin in order to bring out greater glory for himself, because he wants pats on the backs for himself. Because as an omnipotent, omniscient God, he still has needs for some reason. So, yeah, but once again, this is just demonizing humanity to exalt your God. And I could do that with Odin. I can do it with Zeus. I can do it with any God you want. Doesn't prove that they're real. So.
And this is the decision he is articulating. I'm smart. I'm very wise. I read this and I disagree with it. That just shows how wrong it must be.
It's not a question of just disagreeing with the Bible. It's showing how demonstrably it's false. You can't get past Genesis chapter 1 with the image of the world being a flat table hanging on legs with a dome over it, with the sun and moon inside that dome, to realize that very quickly the Bible is ancient mythology. When you consider the fact that there's no evidence whatsoever that the children of Israel were in Egypt and in the numbers that the Bible talks about for 400 years, there's just no evidence of that. And the more archaeologists' spades go into the dirt, the more the Bible dies as far as truthfulness. It's just, I had a professor say the opposite. And then as I studied archaeology, I realized what they were discovering was a lot of crap that gets rid of the Bible. So the first, I would say, 6 books of the Bible, including, Joshua, in that mix, I would say are complete like myth. Okay. They're right up there with the heroes of Zeus and, Hercules and Perseus and all the rest of them. You have, there's just, it's not I'm sorry. That's just, it's not just see, this is where you're wrong, because this is also propagandizing. This is misrepresenting a group of people. Paul completely misrepresents people that don't believe as he does. Okay. This is not true. Okay. What he is saying is not true. Okay. About atheists. If you actually talk to atheists, you will find this out. But neither Driscoll nor Paul ever bothered. That's because long-standing church doctrine and church history are false. They have been proven demonstrably false. Okay. I literally do this all the time. It's like, sorry, that didn't happen. Okay. Moses didn't happen. Adam and Eve didn't happen. Flood didn't happen. Okay. There's a whole bunch of civilizations that went on through the supposed worldwide flood as if no worldwide flood happened. Weird. Tower of Babel didn't happen. Okay. Patriarchs didn't happen. Ancient stories, myths that people told around a campfire, as far as I can tell. And church history has been edited. It's funny that you want to stand on church history, which has largely been edited by people in the church, because at the time they were the victors. Now they're losing, okay, this history battle, and they know it. And so they're running for cover. Okay. I don't attack them. I just point out that they're crap. Okay. And that's the problem. All right. It's just, they're wrong. Okay. Yes. Why would he need to persecute us for being imperfect? Exactly. So, okay. Thank you. Oh yeah. I want to remind everybody, I do have 2 polls in there. There's not just one. There's 2 semifinal polls, because I can only put 4 images in a YouTube poll, and I have 8 of them. So I put 4 in one and 4 in another. And there'll be semifinals, and I'll pick the top 2 of each from each poll, and we'll have a final runoff probably later next week. So I'll probably leave those polls up for a few days, and then we'll see. But this is stuff that I'm using for my channel, so take the time. Of course it does. Why would it agree? That should be that's like saying that the sun comes up in the morning. It's like, sort of. So there's that. Oh, I know it's not a physical attack, but I don't attack people. I just point out that their beliefs about what's true is false. Okay. And a lot of people believe like the Bible is true history. And it's like, no, it's not. It's a bunch of people, like the Old Testament's a bunch of people in the 600, 500 BCs and all the way to 200 BC, to be frank, just writing stuff down that's their myths, their legends. They have no evidence for any of it themselves. They're just writing it down and treating it like history. And the same is true for the New Testament and the Gospels. These people are just writing down stories they have heard, but there is no assessment of whether those stories are true. And that's the problem. So there's that. But yeah, let's keep going.
As a result, I'm a highly evolved animal. And as a highly evolved animal, I should be free to do what I want to do because I know what's best for me.
That is in no way indicative of evolution at all and what human beings think about themselves from an evolutionary point. Evolution should actually probably humble us in realizing that we're just like every other creature on the planet, except for one thing. We have very highly evolved gray matter, and it allows us, it's our survival. We give up a lot, like in strength, speed, teeth. And I don't know that anybody in evolution accurately describes it as more highly evolved. What do you mean by that? Because if I go into the ocean and there's a great white shark in me, all of my advantages that I have as a human being just disappear. Okay. And the shark wins. Okay. He just swallows my asshole and I'm done. Okay. There's so many animals that can kill humans. So are they more highly evolved than humans in certain aspects? The whole idea of lower evolution and higher evolution just doesn't, when I listen to people talk about evolution, it just doesn't exist. This is a creationist slash theist creation. I just don't see it. Yeah. So there's that. So there's that. So there's that.
Let me say this. God's plan for your life is better than your plan for your life. Okay?
So a non-existent entity has a better plan for my life than myself, who I can actually kind of demonstrate that I exist. That is such a general statement. I always hear that from preachers. I used to use it myself, that God has a better plan for you than you do. The problem is you got to kind of prove that God exists first, because otherwise all you're really doing is you're still making a plan for yourself by yourself. You're just putting the moniker of God on it. And it's amazing how so many of God's plans don't end well. I mean, if you know, I've known so many people. I feel called into the ministry. I feel called to go move to this town. I feel called to do this. God is leading me and directing me in his perfect plan to do this. And then when it gets executed, it's an absolute disaster. So much for, you know, all the bullshit that of God having a plan for your life. You know, it's just one of those things. You know, it's like, what the hell are you doing? Okay. This is an assertion. Okay. You might want to prove that God exists and actually gives a shit about you before you say that he has a plan for your life. Okay. Those are kind of prerequisites. But most of the time, what I saw in the Pentecostal church with hearing from God about this plan for my life is people already had an idea of what they wanted to do. They just wanted to get some sort of feeling that God was okay with it. Okay. And it really is this kind of self circle jerk, really, of I have a plan and I just want God to approve. And oh, lo and behold, when I prayed, God approved and off I go. And so I'm sorry, there's a lot of really things that go badly. Yeah, this is a good example. When I was a Pentecostal, I took missions class. We had countless examples of people that felt called to certain people groups and ended up dead. Okay, so to Christians, they're all martyrs, and it's like, no, to me, they're a waste. Okay, a waste of a human life that should have known better. Okay, if God's plan is for you to go there and do that, then it should probably work out better. Um, so there's that.
So where he goes with this, he goes to the issue of worship. We tend to think of worship as songs sung in church. It's not. It's live, it's lived on the earth.
Yeah. Religion tends to make worship into something bigger than it is. I would agree that it's not just songs sung in church, but it's more of there is an aspect in Christianity where worship is about lifestyle. It's not just about going to church and singing songs. So I would agree with him that the Bible kind of pushes you in the direction of a life lived. A reasonable act of worship is to give everything to God kind of thing is very much in the pages of the Bible, particularly the New Testament. So there's that. Actually, there's about 40,000 denominations and sects of Christianity alone, and that's not even talking about other religions. Yes, starvation every day, that's part of God's divine plan, but he's going to absolutely help you find your car keys. So so there's that. You kind of have to switch sometimes from top chat to live chat. I have to do that even though I run the channel. They just sometimes just put, YouTube kind of censors that shit. So, and thanks, Joe. Yeah, hit the like button. It always helps me out. Appreciate it. But yeah, you have to switch to full live chat. Otherwise, it just gives you the top chat. I have to do that myself. So, but all right. But yeah.
Worship is inclusive of singing, but it's much bigger than that. Worship is who or what is the center of your life? Who or what is preeminent or prominent? Who or what do you devote yourself to and make sacrifices for?
You know what? I'm not even going to disagree, which is why I think worship is kind of silly. Okay, because the way he's describing it, there's only room for one thing there. If you notice how he's using his language, he's saying that there's only one thing that can fit in there. The problem with us humans is we tend to be multifaceted, and different things have different importance at different times in our life. And so the problem with this religious definition of worship to me is what's important now may not be important later. Okay, what I devote myself to, and I can have multiple devotions and still, like, a good example is, my kids and my grandkids. I'm devoted to all of them as equally as I can. Okay, and at certain times one of them might need more of my help than others. And so it is possible to be very devoted to different members of your family and that not be really worship. I don't know. It's a really weird concept to think that, if you got to be totally devoted, it it's not like that. So it's not like that at all. Uh, yeah. Sorry, bringing up kids. It's like he doesn't think about the times in certain situations, like in society. If I have like 10 friends, I can be devoted to one and move to the other, and depending on the situation and timing. And this is why polytheism works too, and it's still worship, because you can devote yourself to multiple gods and still say you're worshiping even when you switch. Okay, so it's a really sad thing, but what he's pushing towards is there can only be one. There can only be one. You got to behead all the rest and have the quickening and only be one. So yeah, Grumpy Librarian's right. Read Genesis 15. There is really no room for free will. There isn't. Calvinists will tell you that. So Calvinist Christians will tell you that.
Some people worship their pets. Some people worship their spouse. Some people worship their kids. Some people worship their beauty. Some people worship their spouse's beauty. Some people worship their zip code. Some people worship their grade point average. Some people worship their lifestyle.
Well, now we've really moved into what I would call the low bar thing of worship. Because you define worship this way, then anything that is taking, like, if you have to pick up your kids from school and you're not thinking about God at that point, then by this definition, you're not worshiping God. It's really a ridiculous notion when you really think about it, because you get to a point when you go down this rabbit hole of this definition of worship, that anytime you're doing anything else, thinking about anything else but God and giving him glory, then you're engaged in idolatry. Okay, you've made the definition of worship too broad at this point. And so, but he's trying to make sure everybody sticks with his face so he gets the money in the collection plate every week. So you know, and you can't do that if other people have to devote that money to something else, like living life. So, yeah, it's a definite misuse and abuse of the word at this point. Like he's just making shit up to make sure that people, yeah, it really does mean nothing at all at that point. It's you've created such a broad definition that it doesn't really define what worship is anymore. So that's a great one, Michael. I've heard that one before. It's still funny. So, yeah, there you go. Oh, Calvin Ball. Yeah. I used to debate Calvinists as an Arminian, and they're fun. They're always fun. So, yeah. Yeah, he only had a dream of meeting Jesus. He never actually met him himself. So, even but it seems like if he had actually met Jesus himself, he would have mentioned it, but he doesn't. So,
Some people worship themselves. We are all created in the image and likeness of God. We were created to worship. We can't help it. So we're all
assertion without evidence. But I want to get back to worshiping myself. I would consider myself a very poor object of worship. Okay. I don't know about anybody else in the room right now, but it's like I make mistakes. I have led myself down wrong paths. I mean, that's no reason to give up on trying, but it's like I'm not omnipotent, I'm not omniscient. There's nothing in me that's worthy of anybody worshiping, let alone me worshiping myself. I mean, when you have such a low bar for what worship is, I guess, but I just don't see making myself into a god. It doesn't work for me. Um, I just so there's that. I just don't, this is him just asserting stuff like some people worship themselves. I mean, I get narcissism as a thing. I see it all the time in politicians in particular. But it's really interesting that, I think you can love yourself without being narcissistic about it. And I don't really think that, I'm worshiping myself when I say, hey, man, I did a good job there. In fact, it's one of the things I talk to my therapist about because I have a tendency to diminish my accomplishments, because of the whole worship aspect. Oh, I got to give that to God. Whenever I do accomplish something, I got to like give it back to God because if I don't, I'm not really truly worshiping him or not truly humble about it. So, I, so it's like, okay, Evan, we'll start worshiping you then. I know you're being sarcastic, but I get it. um, yeah, it's yeah, it's like yeah, Asho in his very unique way is illustrating a point here. Like it's like somebody told me. It's all hearsay, and somehow it's not wrong. So there's that. Yes, and that's a perfect indoctrination tool, by the way, Mr. Unknown. It's a perfect way to indoctrinate people into thinking that they're better than people that demand evidence. Imagine that a religion has a tool and an idea within it that keeps people faithful through indoctrination, but it is an indoctrination tool. I doubt that Jesus ever even said that. So, and it's something that if he did, he was a cult leader. Okay. Because it's a perfect way of saying, just believe, be better off if you just believe rather than question things. And this is the hallmark of every religion. Don't question it, just believe it. And you're literally telling me that this is the case by using that verse. I mean, I would have challenged Jesus on that one if I'd been standing there. Be like, what are you saying? There's no evidence for what you did? So, yes, blessed are the gullible, every salesman ever. Yes, blessed are those who fall for my shtick without evidence. So, it's like it's I mean, if anybody else said that, if it, just believe my stuff. You're more blessed if you believe what I'm saying than questioning it. You would absolutely call them on being full of shit, but Jesus says it, and somehow he's not full of shit. Okay, come on, man. It's like it just no. That's great, Kristen. Thanks for that one. I'm going to keep that up for a little while. We continue.
All worshipers, the only difference is who or what do we worship? How do we worship?
Okay, the assertion is that we're created in the image of God, so we're all designed to worship. And it's like, well, why would God design us to worship if he's omnipotent and omniscient? Why would he need worship? It's the continued thing. He doesn't need it. Okay, so if we're created to do it, why does he need to create people to worship him? It's like, it's like me creating a whole bunch of AI robots saying with the programming, you've got to constantly come up with ways to exalt Ed and make Ed feel better about himself. That's really narcissistic. And, it's like, I just don't, that's what the gospel says, but the gospel is written by anonymous authors and we don't know where the story came from. So, if you want to believe stuff that's third, fourth hand, I guess that's your business, but that's what the Bible says, but it doesn't prove it. So, yeah, there's that. Yes, snake oil salesman would do better. Yes, why would a perfect being require anything? So he wouldn't.
The alcoholic worships the bottle. The drug
Nope.
addict worships the needle.
Nope.
The sex addict worships the experience that they enjoy.
Nope. None of that is true. That is a complete misunderstanding of how addiction works. Okay. People get involved. They like, and you know what? I'll add one. And people who are religious are addicted to religion because it all stimulates the same area of the brain. I remember as a Pentecostal reading a study once about how Pentecostal experiences stimulate the same areas as sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So it's like there's a pleasure center in our brain and we can get addicted to the pleasure of it. That's it. That's the real essence of addiction. Okay, we're not worshiping anything. A lot of people who become addicts just get caught up in it. And yes, there's a lot of self-victimization in it, but misunderstanding this as worship, that's a load of shit. Okay. I've dealt with addicts many, many times, and I would say like ministries like Teen Challenge, they just trade one addiction for another. Okay. All you have to do is get them to stop being stimulated in the pleasure centers of their brain by alcohol, sex, or drugs, and get them stimulated by the high they get off religion, and you will get the same effect. Okay. And this is something in science that probably Mr. Driscoll doesn't want to deal with, because when you look at the science of addiction, this is a load of shit. It's like, it's garbage. Yeah, we try to be lenient around here, rumor, and besides, these people, when they comment like that, they make my point for me a lot. It's actually helpful to me. So, but this is such a poor understanding of addiction right here. When you put the worship aspect in it, it just means like, oh, I'm devoted and I like it. I'm sorry, most addicts hate what they are. Okay, they hate the fact that they can't get over it. They don't like it. They're not worshiping it. They have gotten into something and they can't get out. They've trapped themselves and they need help to get out. Okay, and you just substituting belief in God and worship of God is just stimulating the same pleasure areas of the brain, and it's just another addiction. Okay, and what you're really saying is, I don't want people to be addicted to all this stuff. I want them to be addicted to my religion because it makes the sales easy. Yeah, I think so. Yep. Now I'm addicted to the Lord. I have a great deal of experience with Teen Challenge in the Assemblies of God because it was kind of an Assemblies of God thing. But yeah, it's just when I look back at it now, what these Teen Challenge guys had really done is they had traded their addictions to alcohol or to porn or whatever and some women too. There were women in Teen Challenge too, but it was like they had all just traded their addiction for this religious belief. Okay. And now they had that stimulate them. And then coupled with the like rigid discipline of the program, which a lot of addiction programs have, you just kind of cleanse yourself of the physical need for the addiction. It's the psychological need you have to deal with. And you just replace that with Jesus, or any religion will do. There's plenty of Muslims, that will tell you that their Islam got them over their addiction. Hindu is same. Lots of religions will say that that's how people got rid of their addiction. And it's really just moving from one thing to another. But this is such a poor understanding of addiction. It's just ridiculous. So moving on.
The person who worships themselves and is constantly filled with rage whenever they are criticized or opposed, they worship their own reputation.
I don't know, but I do think a person's reputation is kind of important. Okay, it's not a question of worshiping it. It's when people attack your reputation that can have some very damning social effects. And so, yes, people are going to push back on that. Okay, it happens all the time because your reputation is integral to you being a social species. And I'm sorry, Mr. Driscoll, my guess is if I attacked you, I would attack your reputation and basically say you're selling something in order to make money. You would push back on that. Okay. So are you worshiping your reputation at that point? I mean, we're leading down rules for thee, but not for me kind of aspects here. So there's that. Yeah, I don't really know who worships themselves. I know narcissism is a thing, though.
We all live for someone or something. And the point is this: he divides here all of humanity into two categories. We tend to think of things in terms of a spectrum. God thinks very binary, like male, female, good, evil, heaven, hell.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Or you have a very bunch of simple humans that have created a binary God because they can't get past it. You've created a God in your head that's very binary to justify your preconceptions of the universe. It's very overly simplistic thinking, and putting things on a spectrum yeah, sure, it complicates it, but it's also more accurate. I mean, I don't get the argument here, because it's like he's basically saying, you got to think in binary terms, put everything in a false dichotomy term to be real about it. And it's like, the one thing I've learned in my thinking since leaving Christianity is how much of it it's always right or left, good or evil. But real situations don't always fit into those binary categories. So, because he believes that Elizabeth, he thinks that we all really believe in God. Okay. And just like Romans says, we all believe in God. We've just rejected him in our unrighteousness. And all we've done is left the real God and created our own, whatever that goal may be. And he's in particular talking about sex, so we've created sex as our God as atheists, and that's what we're really going after. So yeah, it really is only suitable for programmers. So yeah, heaven and hell, he mentions, male, female, all that stuff. God thinks in binary terms. So has God a programmer? Has God a programmer? Oh, wait, we've had that already. Several people have done that for me. and completely butchered what programming is in the process, by the way, according to programmers. So
Holy Spirit, demonic spirits. God's very binary in his thinking. And what he's saying
Holy Spirit, demonic spirits, unproven assertions. Awesome.
here is this, that there really only is two categories: those who worship the Creator and they enjoy and steward creation, or those who worship the created in place of the Creator. That's it.
Okay, prove there's a creator, because I can get out of this binary by basically saying there is no creator. There's us, and we're not creations, okay, of anything other than the universe, if you want to put it that in that general of a term. We're here because of, evolutionary selection and things like that. So if you get rid of the creator created binary altogether, your argument just kind of completely at this point just disappears. But when you're when you have gullible people, putting things in binary terms is very much a salesman technique. It's you don't want to do the evil thing. You want to do the right thing. You don't want to consider yourself to be the creator. You want to recognize that creator and worship him, kind of thing. This is just like, yeah, well, yeah, we all get to that point. I mean, I hope. Binary should think of binary. Oh. Yeah, God, yeah. Yeah, why should I worship anything is a really good question. But he puts a low bar definition of worship anyway. So, yes, I know he denies evolution completely. And that's why he probably puts that in a binary too. He's probably saying either believe that this is created or you believe that this is a product of random chance. And then he'll probably accuse me of being a hard determinist, which has nothing to do with random chance. So it's already really confusing when theists argue at that point, because they want to make me a hard determinist with no free will and everything is just determined. And then they want to turn around and say that it's all created by random chance. Which is it? You can't have both. Yeah. It's like, so yeah, they all do it to some extent. Yeah. Is always somewhere in the middle. I'm not sure about that. I mean, and atheism is, there's a couple camps in atheism too, actually, and a lot of other things too. There's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. Sorry, the Bible and ancient history do not line up, especially Egyptology. Okay, sorry. I hate to break the news to you, but that's a completely false statement. So, so regular prayer. Yeah. So, all right. Let's see where we're going.
This explains all religions. This explains all spiritualities and all ideologies. Sometimes we create a philosophical or moral or spiritual system, or even a political system. That's a created thing. But the thing that we tend to worship the most is sex. Because of everything.
Holy shit, where did that come from? We worship sex. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm fond of the practice, but oh my gosh. Can't make this shit up, I guess. Yes, they will. They will. Anything you give devotion to is obviously worship to them, and that's a problem because they want you to be from a propaganda point of view, from a cult mentality type of view. They want you totally as devoted as possible to the bullshit they're preaching. So anything that takes up your time, your energy, everything. My closing catchphrase is more than just a nice sentiment. It's attacking the very nature of religious cults and things like that, in the fact that they always are demanding your time, your money, and your energy and your stuff, your abilities. And they don't want you to spend them on yourself or the people you love and care for, or to make this a better world. They want you to spend it on their religious bullshit. And that's so it's absolutely a technique that I cut against with my closing catchphrase. So it's like, yeah, me too. I enjoy a lot of things. And I think the thing about it is I became less obsessed about sex once I got out of the faith. It's really kind of interesting. He finally got to it. Yeah. Yeah, he finally got to it. Oh. It's got about 3.5 minutes, which means this is where we're going to really talk about the issue. We're really going to talk about it.
Thing God made, he said it was good, but when God made the human body, he said it was very good. The apex of God's creation was the human body. The result is we tend to worship.
I have to say it. If that's the apex of his creation, he's a really shit designer. Okay, because the human body has so many flaws in it. It definitely proves evolution more than creation by a perfect being. But I digress.
Created things rather than the creator. Let me say this. This is the Bible's language of idolatry. Idolatry is where we worship someone or something instead of God, and you need to know that usually who or what we worship is not a bad thing, it's a good thing in God's place. Sex is good, but a bad God.
Well, if you reject all gods, it never becomes a god. That's the thing. I mean, you're kind of exalting the status of created things like sex and other things to a point where you can't really avoid worshiping them according to your very low bar definition of worship. I mean, I don't, the problem I have with this is so linked to the idea of purity culture. It just kind of pisses me off at this point because you don't want to be obsessed with sex. And I'm sorry, it's literally impossible for most teenagers not to be obsessed with sex. So it's like, it's kind of written into our DNA, that survival thing, that create more humans thing. It's like, and now you're going to define it in such a way that if people follow your religion, there's just no way to get out of it. Oh boy. I don't like where this is going.
Sex is good. It's a good gift from God, but it's a bad God. We tend to take a gift that God has given or a thing that God has made, and we tend to replace it with God. And as a result, we take something that was good and we make it bad. This is what happens with sex all the time. So the number one thing that we are most likely, according to what Paul is saying, when we reject, suppress the truth, when we exchange the truth of God for a lie, when we live according to the disobedience that leads to the wrath of God, that ultimately what happens is this: we worship sex. We worship sex.
Now, as far as the passage goes, he has a valid point, because Paul, after verse 25, really does go into the whole sex thing about, homosexuality. He goes into depraved actions and all that stuff. So he is making a good textual point about where Paul is going, but Paul is full of shit. So, he's just regurgitating a real full of shit argument. Okay. So I don't have a lot of respect for Paul anymore. Like when I read Paul now, it's like I have a hard time doing it because I want to throw it across the room. Because he is so much of a misguided mystic that he doesn't know a lot about anything, but he certainly claims to. And he relies on the authority of his apostleship a lot, though he does. He's one of those people that plays up their authority as an apostle, but downplays it at the same time to actually give himself more authority, because then it makes him look humble. Paul does that all the time. So, but he is making a good textual note in the sense that that's where Paul's reasoning takes him, and so therefore, Mr. Driscoll is going down that route as well. Is that in the end, we all just kind of worship our sexually deviant behavior. That's what we really want to go after. So, yeah, he cusses too. I cuss. I'm a former ex-pastor that cusses now, but I have good reasons. So, oh, yes, it's unsatisfying. Nice backhanded sexually related joke that a lot of people would relate to. So.
Now, you tend not to see it as a spiritual issue, but the God of the Bible does. He's going to say this later.
And the God of the Bible's a prick, and he doesn't really know much of anything. He seems to know what the humans that write about him know.
In Romans 12. I'll give you a thought that comes to mind. For many years, I've had the honor of pastoring largely younger people. My primary audience online is younger. I've had this conversation with many women, but one woman in particular came up one day after a service many years ago. She said, "Pastor Mark, I don't know what the big deal is. I'm dating my boyfriend. We moved in together. We sleep together." She said, "I don't know what the big deal is. We're just two consenting adults. Nobody's getting hurt, and we're having fun." I said, "What do you think about Jesus?" She said, "Jesus is my God." I said, "No, he's not."
Okay. So this is Now, once again, I'm going to say it. Whenever preachers tell stories like this, I'm betting, I don't know, 2 to 1 that it's a bullshit story. Like they're making it up on the fly. Okay. Maybe such discussions take place, but I knew that I told a lot of stories during my sermons that I just got from other people. And a lot of preachers do this personal anecdote stuff. And, you know, the thing is, the situation he described that this young lady's in, or, this person is perfectly acceptable to me today. They're living together, they're having sex together, having fun. They're both consensual adults. I don't see a problem anymore. Okay. Um, so it's, but you don't really, he's going to make the case. We don't really worship God, worship Jesus. You're worshiping your sex life. And it's like, you're devoting that and you're not, but it's like, he can't see that this person also can see that Jesus is their hero, so to speak, and also do the same what they're doing in their life. He can't have that. He's got to have everybody totally devoted to his religion, or it doesn't work. Okay, it just doesn't work. And it's a really good salesman technique to get rid of all the competitors. Okay, and Christianity does that really well. Christianity labels so many things as sin and so much stuff that you really only have one option, is to try to worship God the best you can, try to follow Jesus the best you can, and you're going to fail. Okay. And that's kind of the sales pitch. So there's that. So there's that. No, but here we go.
I said, because Jesus said something and the boy said something, and you decided to obey the boy instead of Jesus. So all of a sudden, your most important allegiance became to the boy, not to Jesus. That means the boy is Lord over your life. Jesus is no longer Lord over your life.
Okay. So the whole authority angle, if you don't obey the commands of God, then something else is your God. Well, then your doctrine of sin kicks in, and then everybody's a sinner, still a sinner. And so nobody's really following God. So the real problem with this trap is nobody escapes it. And it's because Christianity has created, and all the Abrahamic religions really have created, an imaginary problem that nobody can escape from, because it's not sin, it's just related to your humanity. Okay. I mean, they basically, sin is an attack. The whole doctrine of sin is an attack on the humanness of humans. And just by being human, you fail. Okay. And like, it's a trap, and it's a great salesman move, because then everybody needs your product. Okay. You create this invisible problem that everybody has, that you can't really prove. It's an assertion by the Bible that isn't made in reality. Like, if you say sin exists, this is why I deconverted, because I couldn't put an ounce of sin in my hand. Okay. It's an assertion by the Bible, and it's one that's not proven. It's just asserted, and everybody just accepts it. Well, people do bad things, so that's sin. Well, that's not the definition of sin in the Bible. If you define sin biblically, it's God gives a commandment and you disobey the command of God, and that's sin. And then you enter into this state where you can't escape it. It's a great salesman jibe for religion, because everybody belongs to that club if you accept the assertion that sin exists. Okay. And then, now you're trapped, and you need the imaginary solution of Jesus. So you're basically, yeah, it's like, yeah, we're getting to this point where, there's no way to escape this. Okay. The religion is really well designed. This is why it survives. Okay. By the way, this is why Christianity, a lot of religions survive, is they're well designed in their attempts to keep people in it. Okay. Because you create these false problems, you create all this stuff, and then boom, everybody's in it. And then how do you get out? Okay. And it's a trap. Okay. It's a salesman trap. Okay. Once and it's been around for, salesmen have been doing their shtick, forever, ever since somebody decided that they wanted to sell something to somebody and make money off of people's gullibility. Religion has been around, and these religious claims have been around, and that's what's happened. It's one of those things. it's like it's a perfect trap. It should be. It does like sexual represent, but he never says for sure. Okay. Let's see. Carnal desires. That's a lot. Yeah. The problem is everybody, when you sit there and define normal human desires as carnal, I used to get the, I had a professor in Bible college. You're just carnal. You're just carnal all the time. It's like, he's a Southern preacher, and it's like, you're taking normal human behavior and turning it into something depraved in your head, and it's really judgy. Okay, but there's no things about it. So yes, we will keep our tithers. That's the issue. But it's always about getting people to come to God. When I deconverted, that was my thought, man. And it was like, holy shit, Ed, you sell imaginary project to solve imaginary, problem. And then people in gratitude put money in the basket to you to pay you. It's like you are a con at that point. And now I will debate whether a lot of preachers know they're a con, or, some of them do and some of them don't. Okay. Some of them think this is real. So it's, I don't know. He's basically saying that because she decided to listen to the boy instead of God, that boy has suddenly become her God. And it's like, and I'm sure sex is a part of that and all that stuff. So
I said, so the Bible talks about idolatry in terms of adultery. She said, well, it's my body. I said, actually, it's not. He's the creator.
actually, so what? It doesn't change the definition just because if I create a robot, I can't say that the robot's body necessarily belongs to me. It's like, I've never understood this type of thinking that even if I agreed with you that I had a creator, it's still me and my body. But because he created it, it must be his. There's a lot of things where that's just not the case. So yeah, it's just bad breath. Okay. It's you overemphasize the problems and call them something, and then you sell the product that supposedly fixes it. Um, so it's that. And Michael brings up a good point here that really any fleshly desire gets at some point labeled as carnal, okay, by these people, because if they can label everything you do as carnal, then there's no way for you to escape the need for their product. Sin is a really great concept, as far as a made up problem, because it hits everybody, because you can't stop being human. Okay, you can't stop having sexual thoughts because that's your sex drive. It's there. You can't stop having a need for food. Well, how much, gluttony is always one of my favorite sins that most Christians avoid at every potluck. They engage in it. And it's like it's really funny to me that how much of what normal human behavior constitutes a sin. And once you get out of this, it really becomes laughable what you think was so evil. Um, yeah, it's no longer theirs. You gave me this life, you sent me out on my own. It seems like it's mine now. Yeah, so if God were true, yes. Why would you believe something happened when nothing in the world points to it actually happened? Yeah, it's a control mechanism. Okay, sin has got to be one of the greatest problems ever invented out of the mind of man to buffalo people into following Abrahamic religions. All Abrahamic religions have the idea of sin this way. And it allows, you think awful things about yourself. You have a bad day. Some preacher comes along and says, well, you're a sinner. That's why you're having a bad day. And I offer you the solution of Jesus. And then now you need to come to my church, give your money and your time and your energy to my church. Yeah, it's a con. So Well, let's see where he goes.
He made your body. And I said, what you don't understand is that the bed is an altar, that the boy is a priest, and that
Holy fucking really? Oh my gosh. Oh, talk about turning things into something they're not. The boy is just a guy she's boinking, okay? And the bed is just a very convenient place to boink. I don't understand. I absolutely, with a worldwide flood, there absolutely is a massive heat problem. And any geologist could tell you that. Okay. In fact, it's geology that caused a lot of people to no longer believe in the flood. Okay. So there's that. But really, you're turning this normal human activity into an act of worship. It seems like it's exalting things a little bit. I don't think every sexual act I've done has been at the level of ecstasy and worship. Okay. I'm just saying it out loud. You go to a good seminary and learn this stuff. You'd be disappointed, grumpy librarian. Okay. You'd be disappointed. I have this stuff and yeah, it's disappointing. Yeah, me too. I was at an Assembly of God college too, and it was accredited. So yeah, he's pushing it a bit. It's like, so the bed's an altar, the dude's a priest, and you're a worshiper. Man, I don't know if anybody's sex is that good. I mean, so he's literally saying that he's the priest of a sex god, and that's the altar. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of a what the fuck moment, the whole thing. Probably.
sex is the sacrament of pagan religion.
Sex is the sacrament of pagan
And then what
religion.
happens is when the wrath of God is poured out, we're having fun.
That was my bad. See if I can find
So that's why it says in Romans 12, to offer your bodies is the sacrament of pagan religion.
Okay. I want to deal with that. I've studied pagan religions. Yeah, sure. A lot of it's about fertility. But that doesn't mean that pagan religions necessarily use sex as a sacrament. In some rituals, it's there. In other rituals, there's no sex involved. Okay. It's more of a acknowledgement of yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to ask his wife. I'm not sure she'd give an honest answer. Yeah, it's kind of like a sex god. Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, but that's the sacrament of the pagan religion. No, it's an act, can be actions and part of worship, but not every pagan religion devotes itself to sex. There's other ones, there's definitely gods of order and gods of chaos, so to speak. And so the whole yin yang thing comes out. So yes, and this is something I don't think he deals with at all. He's like, when you're an addict to this stuff, it's you don't even know. Okay, you don't even know, and that's the problem. He already has demonstrated his poor understanding of addiction, so that's kind of bad on his part. So definitely not a god, not a sex god. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh, but yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I mean, I get it. And so all religions have, I mean, the thing about it is, even here's the thing about Driscoll and his ilk, and I would say some fundamentalist Catholics and everything else. There's a meme out there, where the caption is, grandma says that all we ever think about is sex. Also grandma, and grandma is there with her husband and 16 kids. Okay. How the hell did they get there? Okay. So who's really obsessed with sex? Because I'm fairly certain it took more than 16 times to make that happen. Um, so it's it's interesting that Christians will sit there and decry the open fertility aspects of this, but then absolutely make it about fertility when it comes to the purpose of sex. Like, yeah, there's some enjoyment there, but the real purpose is to create more babies. It's like it's talking out, I'm sorry, the introducing of concepts like Mother Mary the Virgin and some of the aspects of the Holy Spirit. When you read John's descriptions, it's like it's kind of motherly female, kind of thing. Yeah, it's not really it's not really good. um, so oh oh man, but yeah. Okay, let's got a little bit to go yet.
I said, that's why it says in Romans 12 to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, for this is your spiritual act of worship.
Yep, I knew he'd get to it eventually. Yeah, that definition of worship basically means everything with your body has to be done in a worshipful manner. And that leads to a lot of problems, though. If I'm just walking down the street to get point A to point B, do I have what's the proper way to walk so I'm worshiping God? I mean, this mentality just leads to all kinds of control mechanisms of what you do, how you walk, how you stand. It in the past has led to discussions of what the proper position for sex is. The whole bit just comes out of this mentality of you got to give your body as your reasonable act of worship. So everything that you do has to come out of that. And it's like, it's so controlling. Like it is the basis of a lot of holiness, religious control mechanisms, is this idea of worshiping God with your body. And so it's like, that's, when I was in the Assemblies of God, it was the basis of, no alcohol, no drugs, no sex outside of marriage, no, all of that stuff was forbidden, no dancing. I don't know how to dance because my denomination didn't allow me to go to them. So it's like, I would love to learn, but it's like, I just never got the experience. I couldn't go to prom. I never went to prom, none of that stuff. So it's like all that stuff just, it's all well, that's not worshiping God. You'd be pagan and all that other crap. And it's like, when you give it that definition of worship, like Paul does, and other people like Driscoll follow it, there's no way to not be controlling. Okay. You have to control everything. So, so there's that. I mean, I don't, just, yeah, you dead on hate it when they use the Bible. Yeah, I know it gets old. Oh yeah, he's definitely younger. So definitely. Um, oh man. Oh man. Oh, conflicting creationist tales. Yeah, I hate to break the news to everybody who thinks the Genesis account is original to Genesis. It's not. The Epic of Gilgamesh. There's actually several ancient histories that it borrows from that are older than it. So when the writers were writing their version of it in the 600 BCs, they basically borrowed from all the other myths around them and then just made their god in charge of it. So that's pretty much what happened. It's nice. Yeah, it is nice fan fiction. It's ancient fan fiction, but fan fiction nonetheless. So, so there's that. So there's that aspect of it. So
What you do with your body is your act of worship. I said, when you lay on that bed, he's a pagan priest, that's an altar, and your sex act is to a demon god, and that breaks the heart.
I can't take this guy seriously. The problem is back when I still believed this kind of argument worked for me. And I get there's a gullible group of people in front of him who want their confirmation. So the boy is a pagan priest, the bed is an altar, you're a worshiper, and the act of sex is your sacrament. How the hell does anybody take these people seriously? It tends to get that way, Kristen, every once in a while. I'm sorry. I don't know how you're reacting to that, but it's kind of nuts. But yeah, I have great people here that'll keep you entertained, if nothing else, in the chat. I'm trying to keep you entertained, but they do a pretty good job of it too. Oh my gosh. Oh. Yeah, because here's the thing you're getting to, Fred, is because God is omniscient. I want people to think about that for a minute. If God does exist and he's omniscient, he has watched every porn film being made. He has watched every person who's ever had sex with another person. He has seen it all. He's watching it all right now. I'll bet tonight, right at this moment, somebody's getting laid and he's watching it. And it's like, it's not enough for God to be a porn addict. He's also got to be watching and be a voyeur of everybody else's sexual activity. Like, he cares so much who you screw. Okay. And it's just, it's amazing. Yes. Yeah. You come in for the fear, later on the confirmation bias kicks in. That's probably a valid observation. I became a Christian because I was 8 years old at a vacation Bible school, and they were preaching salvation. Of course, the hell doctrine was thrown in, and that's a pretty heavy rap when you're 8 years old and can't really assess whether it's true. And so you run to the altar, and I gave my heart to Jesus to avoid hell. And then later on, I did it with, it leads to a better life, and all that other crap came later. So a lot of people come to Jesus that way, a demon god. Okay, chat. In the sexual act, which demon god is being worshipped? I want specifics. Give me some specifics. I did this with one of my other streams, with what red flags does Jesus have? So which demon god specifically is being worshipped when you boink somebody? Which one is it? Yeah, it's creepy when you really think about it. If a human had that capability, we would absolutely think they were a creeper. It's like, okay, and whatever you're into, I guess, as long as it's consensual. But because slandish, obviously, relief and frustration. Oh. Oh my goodness. I knew you guys wouldn't fail me. I know my group. I know my group. Oh my goodness. Oh. Yes. Yes, this is so true. I remember when my dad found my stash, and it's like I had to burn it all because he was really religious. But the fact is, I'm up and clearing out the rest of it in my room. I'm looking down at him next to the burning barrel, and he's like perusing through it. I called him on that later when I was an adult. I said, don't give me that bullshit. Okay. It's like, and the fact is, they never knew that I kept, they only found one of 4. So when you're a youth and you're sexually repressed denomination, you tend to go overboard with shit. She who thirsts. Oh, yeah, yeah, apparently so. Apparently so. Yeah, you found your dad's stash. Oh my goodness. The art of hiding pornography back in the day. Now you just get online and just have to clear your browser history from time to time. Jesus himself is a red flag. Yeah, we kind of came to that conclusion. He just has a lot of them too. Most notably, the most notable red flag that evening was his dad. So, yes, another supernatural God card. Yep. Yeah, there are some parents that are like that. Yay for them. Yeah, how many demon gods are there? I don't know because he might be pushing for the angle that there is like a demon god for every single sexual act, and that's a lot of demon gods. So I don't know. Hey, Martin, a little bit late to the party, but okay, it's good. This guy has been humorous. He just basically said that this young lady was a worshiper, her boyfriend was the priest, and the bed was the altar. And when they boinked, that was their act of worship to their pagan god. And we were wondering which pagan god it is. So, your dad too, huh? Yeah, it's funny because it's like my parents were kind of hippy dippy before I came along, and so they were very progressive on that sort of behavior. And it's probably why they took such a strong reaction to it later. But when they became Christians, but it's like it's it's interesting that when me and my friends and some of my cousins have had conversations, it's like were our parents like doing it to each other back in the day, like swapping and stuff? I said, I don't have any evidence against it. So it's like, and then you see this in a lot of people when they come into religion. It's whatever behavior the religion condemns that they used to do, they become the most adamant against. Okay. And it's like they have a lot of guilt and stuff. And, Driscoll here talked about guilt and shame earlier. And, you know, getting rid of false shame or shame that doesn't really affect your life is a big part of deconversion. It's like I'm in therapy for a lot of it. So, it's like shame is one of those things, especially when it's a created shame that's false. It can be a real problem. So it's that. But yeah, I'm not surprised that your dad said the same. So it's hilarious. Um, I, well, here's the thing with Yahweh. He openly acknowledges there are other gods. So, I mean, people think that the Old Testament is monotheistic, but it's not. It's like every tribe has their own God and they're just, prick waving each other and beating each other up. So now we're screwed. Yes, you had to work at a video rental place. I have no doubt, John. I have no doubt in my mind. I used to see this when video rental places, and I go in to rent a video, and I'm watching some of the people I know that are Christians, and they're really close to the adult section. Not quite there. I was always amazed at how popular Westerns were because they were next to the porn section. So, so there's that. Oh man. Yes, they do. Yeah, they do like to have pissing contest. There was a time in my life where having a real shitty testimony was the way to get popular with Christians. Now it's why Mike Warnke became such a big thing back in the 70s and 80s because he was supposedly a Satanist priest of 500 people and bled his blood into a cup and drank it and all this really weird piece of shit stuff. And so everybody flocked to him because of his testimony. And then it turned out that half of his testimony was bullshit. So it's like, uh, so there's that. Yes. And that's adult Dutch. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's it's like everybody believes everybody else's God exists, but they're fighting about which one's in charge. Okay. And it's proven out in how you beat each other up. Okay. But God in the 10 Commandments acknowledges other gods' existence. You shall have no other gods before me. It's a nonsensical statement if no gods actually exist. Okay. Other than him. It doesn't make that statement doesn't make any sense unless other gods actually exist. So, well, the thing is, in other video stores, it was science fiction because that was next to the porn section. That was really popular in that store. Yeah, I know what it is. People are like, they're waiting for the opportunity when nobody's in the store so they can grab their porn vid, run up to the counter, pay for it, and leave. Okay, that's how Christians used to do shit. Secret sinning. It's a video all of its own. Well, let's finish this up. Let's see what else bullshit is.
Part of Jesus. Because you've replaced your relationship with the Creator and you've traded it for a relationship with a boy that he created. Everything is spiritual. Nothing is just physical. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's done. Thanks. Okay, well, I'm not going to get his closing spiel. Everything's spiritual. Nothing is just physical. Yeah, another assertion without evidence. I don't know. I with this guy because there's a lot of purity culture basis in this video where you can really guilt trip people for not just that they're having trouble in their sex life and having guilt about having it because it's, fornication and adultery, but now you're going to turn it into idolatry as well. It's amazing how theists like to take sins like this and stack them on top of each other. It's not bad enough that you're sinning against God by fornicating. Now you're an idolater. You're spitting in God's eye. You're not worshiping God correctly. It's just like it's a whole. So there's that. I don't know why they didn't do that. It would have made it so much easier for a lot of them. Yeah. Yeah, they just lost their Pokemon battle. That's probably a good analogy. I actually like that analogy. That's pretty cool. They didn't train up their snakes well enough. They need to go do more training or catch some better snakes. Yeah. But yeah, I think they should have put it next to the religious videos. But people would object to that. Well, you're putting religious stuff next to smut, and that's just wrong. You need to keep that separated. So, it's like, but probably everybody that was using the porn that was also in church would say, yeah, no, do that. It makes it easier. Yeah, spiritual is a valid concept. Yeah, I'm not, you got to prove that concept to me. But I don't think he's basically saying all of us atheists, because we reject God, we worship the God of sex, but doesn't really tell me who that is. So fornication is God's gift to man. Yeah. Okay. If you get me a God. So everything is spirit. This guy knows nothing about teenage boys. Yes, he knows nothing. He was one himself, but apparently he completely missed the concept. I mean, to be fair, I've definitely heard of some women worshiping God in that moment. They're definitely crying out to him. So it's alphabetically correct. Oh, Rimmer. Oh, my goodness. It's also why when you go out with Pentecostals, you have to take two of them with you, or any religion for that matter. You can't go anywhere with just one, because they'll either drink all your beer or smoke all your cigs or grab all your porn mags. So just commercialized fornication. Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, Muslim, yeah, etc. All of them. It's like you get one of these people alone, okay, and this is a discussion topic worth talking about here a little bit. But you get these people alone, and if they feel comfortable in confiding with you, they will tell you what they're up to. I guess my last church I appreciated a lot because a lot of this stuff wasn't super sinful. So I had people that smoked, okay, but in other denominations, they left denominations because they weren't allowed to smoke. So they come to my non-denominational, independent congregational church, and they'll smoke on my doorstep. And I really didn't have anything to say about it. All of them probably had alcohol and didn't have a problem with drinking it. You know, some of them, when I got them alone, the jokes were definitely dirty. It's like when you get people by themselves away from the peer pressure of the religion and they can be themselves, it's amazing how much is actually rejected of this kind of teaching. So like when Driscoll is going on and on and on about this being a god, I'm very certain that holy crap, that they're going to be more honest about what's really going on in their life. It's you get people alone and what they really are. This is why I think there's a lot of people in the pew that don't believe any of it. They're just going because it's a social thing. And that's a larger group of people than a lot of Christians want to think, or Muslims for that matter. People are just doing it because it is the thing to do. Yeah, I haven't either. Don't worry about a grumpy librarian. You and me are the same. I've just never tried it. I just don't feel the desire. People ask me about that all the time. Now that you're an atheist, I bet you're doing all kinds of horrible things. It's like, no, I'm probably more straight-laced than you. So it's like, I've never done weed. My alcohol drinking is very social, like one at a social occasion. And it's mostly because I'm autistic. It helps me lighten up a little bit. Um, I don't do that. Currently I think I'm voluntarily celibate because the dating world is just so dystopian out there, and I'm just not into casual sex. So it's funny how they want, this guy wants me to say that sex is my God. Well, it seems like I'd be a little bit more devoted to it if it was my God, but I don't think that's it. So it's amazing what these people think because of this passage, because they think that all of us are going down this sinful path because we have some sin we wanted to follow. And I have found that a lot of atheists are more what we used to call, straight razor kind of things, where they just don't do anything. Okay. It's like it loses its like forbidden fruit aspects. And so it doesn't become attractive anymore. It's kind of like, I was talking to my kids, particularly my oldest boys, the two boys I have, about drinking one time. And this is 5, 6 years ago. They said, Dad, it was really weird. I used to love to drink until I turned 21. And then I could do it legally and it just wasn't a big deal anymore. It's almost like all this forbidden fruit stuff just kind of pushes you into it. And I don't know. It feels bad, doesn't it? I'm not involuntarily celibate right now. I'm voluntarily celibate. It's just weird. It's strange out there. And who do you trust anymore about that stuff? And welcome to it, man. I'm not morally against any of that stuff. It's just, it's not my thing. So it's that way. Yeah, definitely have more of a thing. Yes, there is. It's also interestingly enough, like certain places of questionable reputation, like Hooters, don't survive anywhere else, but they sure as hell survive in this deep South. I couldn't drive through Houston without seeing 6 of them. One. It seemed like there was one on every fucking corner. Um, so, and I'm like, this is the Bible Belt. All right. Yep, me too. I don't, once again, it's a social thing. I used to have a bottle of whiskey around here for medicinal purposes, but yeah, I don't do that anymore either. So, I'd rather smoke weed. Yeah, I get it. You wish there was a sex god? Actually, there are several. I can think of several off the top of my head. The Old Testament god Baal was definitely a sex god. Um, and Aphrodite qualifies. She's definitely a sex god. You know, see Freya of the Norse pantheon, definitely a sex god. You know, every pantheon has like their sexually oriented deity, usually depicted in not a lot of clothing. But there's tons of like male sex gods. The phallic symbol is everywhere. If you look at Egyptian gods, it seems like all of them were sex gods. So, yeah, I mean, see, this is the thing. Michael, this is one of the funniest arguments I ever had as a Pentecostal. We had some German visitors that were from Pentecostal churches in Germany, and they were appalled that we drank coffee. Coffee was of the flipping devil. It was a stimulant. It was a drug. And we're looking at them downing a stein of beer, and, and like, that's alcohol, ain't it? We're supposed to be teetotalers when it comes to alcohol. And it was the funniest argument I ever saw. Two people who are absolutely demonstrating their cultural bias, but thinking their religion backed them up. And it was the same religion. It's hilarious. So, yes, there are lots of prehistoric statues like that. If you in Egyptology, they have to really be careful because almost all of these guys are depicted with rather large members. We'll just put it that way to save YouTube. But yeah, on an yeah, it's gotta be fair. Beyonce could be. I mean, technically, I guess. Good times. Yeah, me too. I got that diagnosis, oh gosh, about 12 years ago. And I've had to cut back on a lot of things. Beer, coffee. Yeah. Yeah. Neither. Well, I'm talking about Roman art, which led us to phallics. Yeah, because that's the thing. Because if you look at these ancient art forms, they really had a thing about penises. They really did. It's just like it sex. I won't deny that Mark's not wrong in this video about sex being very much a part of worship in the ancient world. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you kind of worship it too. You have your, like, the basic modus operandi of a lot of Protestant theology about sex is as long as you do it in the context of marriage, anything goes. And it's like, okay, well, that still leaves a lot of open ground. So, yeah, but that was the funniest argument because they're both arguing what should be teetotal against. So it's like, and see, people, it's a legal drug. Yeah. Yeah, I don't like. I didn't used to like coffee. The only way I'll drink coffee anymore is it's got to be iced coffee and it's got to be creamered down so much that I can't hardly taste the coffee. So it's got to be just that subtle background flavor. I can't do it. So, uh, oh, yeah. What are they gonna see? The thing is, I think they're still going to find devotion to sex if they analyze people's homes, especially bedrooms. So, yeah, that's another one. Yes, yeah. There's a drinking culture that's underground between the ages of 16 and 21. Okay, that my two boys belong to. Okay, and they were talking about it later on in life. It's like once they became 21 and could legally buy it lost its appeal. It was like they were doing something naughty and could get away with it, and it was kind of a thrill for them. But once it became legal, it wasn't a thrill anymore. So Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah, you and me both. Well, there you go. Man, I'm happy for you. Must be a very relaxing, enjoyable lifestyle. Mr. Driscoll here would have disagreed and said you're worshiping sex and weed. You know, I don't know how you'd symbolize that. The marijuana leaf behind the image of naked bodies, maybe. There you go. That way, I'm giving you suggestions. You know, idols you can build for your religion. Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah. They'll tell you all kinds of that. Oh, maple nut crunch. Oh. Yep. Yeah, there's some cultures where drinking beer, like if you go to France, it's the same with wine. Like they have kids drinking wine at the table at 11. And because it becomes normalized, it doesn't really become a thing. You know, it's like it's watered down. It ain't going to hurt them. You know, there's a lot of alcohol in kids' medicines, believe it or not. So it's kind of funny. Oh, there you go. There you go. You know what? I'm going to tell you something, Eric. I bet you it exists. You could look it up on the internet and you could find it. I bet it exists. I will bet money that it exists. And I bet you won't take that bet. Oh, yeah, there you go. I don't know if I could do that. Black coffee. My mom drinks it that way. I just don't. You're not taking the bet, huh? I knew you wouldn't. I bet it already exists. Yep. Yep. A pipe shaped like a naked woman. Imagine my surprise. Here's my surprise face. Oh my goodness. Oh, holy cow. Oh man. Well, my final thoughts on this guy. As a propagandist and a preacher of propaganda, Mark does a hell of a job. He's because of his assumption that people don't really not believe in God, he gets a lot of things wrong. And his definition of worship is so broad that any human activity would qualify as worship. So it doesn't really seem to work. I don't know. I don't know. I guess if you're going to rah the crowd that already has their confirmation bias, it was a pretty good segment. But any atheist that's going to watch this is like, oh yes, here we go, Romans 1 again. And would you please stop using this assumption because it's wrong? And I think that at that point, most of us would just move on and try to do something else. So there's that. Yeah, it's funny how these rituals have wine in them. Like I had a professor who was Jewish, great history professor. Like, he gets out there and the first thing he does is he puts up like an ad for cigarettes, and he says, look at the caption below. For your health, smoke whatever brand of cigarette it was. He says, you need to realize from a historical point of view that at different times, different activities were considered differently. And that's what you have to take in consideration when you look at history. And so it was but he was Jewish, and he made a big deal about the fact that wine was sacred. And then one day he was coming back from synagogue and he was a little tipsy and they pulled him over. So he says, it's a funny story. He said, they let me go because I was a professor, but he says they didn't really think it was him. He said, where'd you get the alcohol? Yeah, prof. And it's like, I was at synagogue. So Attack and die from the surprise. I remember that line. Wine of the spirits, water of life. Oh, these sound like great beers. I'm going to say it. Probably space whiskey. Oh, yeah, a little bit Easter. Yeah, I don't think they do either. It's funny how much all these supposed sins get into religion some other way. Like, he's going to sit here. Mark would have probably, this Mr. Driscoll guy, Pastor Driscoll here, would have said, yes, if sex is your act of worship, if it takes up too much of your time. So, that really kind of puts a damper on Christians' honeymoon period of their relationship, because it's like, well, we don't want to get too much involved because it takes away from, worship of God. So we got to set this aside for every time. And it's like, dude, when you're young, this is the time to be boinking each other as much as possible. So it's like, I don't know. But yeah, it's, oh my goodness. But, he would sit there and say, well, okay, so by his logic, then, guys, I have a question. When you're a Christian and you do everything in the context of marriage, is sex then an act of worship to God? Okay, so he sees it and he has to deal with it. He's in the room. You can't deny. Can't deny. All right. Yeah, which does kind of call into question where they got all their religious beliefs, doesn't it, Grumpy Librarian? I mean, that was kind of true of Christianity too, because a lot of this stuff, we package it and industrialize it, but this stuff has existed for millennia, and you have to wonder, because I read the book of Revelation and I go, my God, what kind of hallucinogen was this person on? I kind of really do agree. Yeah, he is quite the voyeur. Yeah. Fine. Oh man. It could be that simple, actually, because here's the thing: if you're having guilt about killing a bunch of people or handing people over to be killed, and then you're also on drugs, it makes perfectly sense that you would see Jesus at that point. I would probably see Jesus at that point. Get the right concoction of drugs, you would see a lot of things. So that's how God's work is seen. Oh, the shit you can make up. Oh my gosh. No thanks. Your brain is twisted it up. Oh my gosh. Oh. Oh damn. Oh my goodness. Oh man. Oh, dehydration, that's a possibility too. Yeah, seeing Jesus. I mean, I just went through Matthew and the Gospels, and Joseph sure sees a lot of dreams, and I have to wonder, what the hell are you smoking, dude? Um, it's they were the thing about all that stuff is that was accepted as revelation of God, and that's why a lot of people bought into it. Today, we wouldn't accept that. Okay, it's like we understand the manipulative stuff that stuff does to your brain, and why should I believe somebody who was high on something? So it's I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm kind of like questioning a lot of things in religion when you look at them, when they say it's a revelation. What were they smoking when they got this revelation is a very, very good question. And some of that stuff was very common back then. The herbalist, down the street was a common affair in most cities. It's like they would sell all kinds of herbs and different plants and shrooms and everything else. So you have to wonder. So there's that. But I'm going to have to call it a night, guys. We've kind of killed Mr. Driscoll here. I wouldn't recommend this video to anybody who's an atheist, because he's going to completely mischaracterize you, misrepresent you, like everybody who believes Romans 1 will. So, but yeah, thanks everybody for stopping by. It's been great. You guys have been awesome. The comments has been lit. As always, you guys are, the chat was fun. Stream was fun. I had a lot of laughs listening to Mr. Driscoll now and thinking about how the fact that I used to kind of preach that way too when I was a fundy. So, but it was a great night held by all. Hit the button, hit the like button, do all the things if you can. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? So it's like, it's been a good time. You can keep notified by my stream. So thanks everybody for stopping by. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around, so you want to take all your time, money, and opportunities and spend them on yourself and the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And don't waste them on the trappings of original religion and faith, because that's a con job and a dead end. And I speak from experience. But as always, guys, thanks for stopping by, and I will catch all of you next time.